Welcome to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, coming straight to you from Rock and Roll, USA, covering the latest and greatest in educational leadership trends, news, and awesomeness for principals all over the world. Now, here are your hosts, the boss, John Ross, and the Doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio.
Rockstar Principles, episode 30. We are thrilled and excited that we've been with you this long, even though it hasn't been that long. It's only been a couple months.
Well, in the terms of podcast, I think it is pretty long. I think 30 episodes is
it's a
pretty
milestone.
impressive. Yeah,
it's good stuff. Thor's back, so Thor's rejoined us. He is now laying down and letting John scratch his hind legs. So that's the current position of our dog.
For those of you keeping score at home that were wondering what the current position of Thor was.
Yeah, I'll have to post a picture of Thor on our Twitter account at some point for our listeners so they can see what he looks like. All right, we have a pretty cool segment we're about to do. We would like to announce, if you haven't read it on Twitter already, which I'm sure you have if you are following our podcast, that we were accepted to present at the National Conference for NAESP, the National Association for Elementary School Principals. It is in July, and it's in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey! So basically, just imagine the Beverly Hillbillies, and that's what we're going to look like driving down the road to present in Nashville.
We are?
John's going to be in a rocking chair in the back of a truck.
I don't think that gives people a whole lot of enthusiasm, for seeing our presentation.
So we thought, since we've been joking around a lot about presenting and doing some ridiculous things that clearly we're not going to do, and some ridiculous things that we probably will do.
Right.
We thought, with our vast amount of experience in presenting over the years, whether it be as principals, as teachers, as coaches, as mascots, as wrestlers, we could offer some tips for presenting. Yeah,
I think that's a great idea. I mean, if you would allow me to review my resume, I've presented at several Pennsylvania state conferences, at the Pennsylvania Middle Schools Conference. I've done presentations a number of times. I've presented for the state RTII model. I've done a few presentations for them. I actually spoke on Capitol Hill about RTII a few years ago, back in 2010, the summer of 2010. I got the chance to speak to a bunch of staffers. We were told there was going to be senators there, but they just sent their staffers there.
Bastards.
They stood us up. But and I was actually on the national committee in 2005 for the National Middle School Association Conference, which was in Philadelphia. And there's one common thing that I've found in all the presentations that I've done. People love it when you read the PowerPoint slides word for word. People thoroughly enjoy reading along with you as you go through, much like Ben Stein in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, reading your PowerPoint slides. People just love that. It just brings so much to the presentation. Are you sensing my sarcasm from the last segment when we were talking about sarcasm?
So when you're reading your audience,
it drives me nuts. I can't believe that still in 2014 that I can still go to a presentation and somebody will put up PowerPoint slides and read them word for word. That's like my number one. I'll get up and walk out. I mean, I've walked out of a number of presentations. If I see that off the get-go, they're on slide number 1 and they're turning and they're reading it right off of the screen, I'm like, all right, I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to go sit on a different session and allow me to expand on that a little bit if I can too. I was given, my mentor told me before, you pay to go to these conferences. You're not there for free. You're there to be informed. If you're sitting in a session and it's not any good, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, get the heck out of there and go to, have a second choice, have a backup session to go sit in on anytime you're selecting your sessions. Because if one's no good, you need to check out and go to another one to, your time's valuable. So make sure that happens. So our goal as presenters is to make sure no one's walking out of our presentation. I think you really are there to inform and, in a sense, entertain as well. So do not read your slides word for word when you're doing a presentation.
And go back to the other point for a second, because now this segment perhaps now can not just be tips for presenting, but tips for when you attend a conference.
Yeah.
Because you just gave probably the biggest single tip on conference attendance. You are paying for it, so you better make sure you get something out of it. If you go to a crap session, get out. But here's the other point to that, because I think this is almost as important. The people who are running either a state level conference or a national level conference, they work really hard to put those conferences together. However, they have limited resources too. When you're running a national conference, when those concurrent sessions are going on, they don't have enough staff to have someone sit and watch every session to ensure quality control.
Right.
That's why they do those surveys at the end of the session.
Right.
You've got to be honest on those surveys because you could... Number one, if it's the best presentation in the world, you want them to know that so you can bring those people back. But if it's that bad, then they need to know that too. And otherwise, they might not if there's no feedback one way or the other.
Well, and what usually happens, I mean, people usually don't hesitate to be honest in those things. But what happens a lot of times is people do what I say you should do. And then and so they leave. And so the only feedback that the conference committee gets is positive because the negative people have left to go to another session. So if you're doing that and you're really, passionate about it, there's no reason why you can't make a note. If you leave one session to go to another one, and then that one you stay for the whole time and you do the thing at the end, there's no reason why you can't put a little comment at the end. Hey, I started off in this such and such a session, but it was, you need to know I came to this one late because I was in this other one and it was no good. I mean, again, that's how, as I mentioned, as someone who was on a committee, I've been on conference committees and I was on the national conference committee. That's valuable feedback that word gets out between different organizations that set these things up. So if you're attending a session, do that. But getting back to presenting, one of the things that we talked about in doing our presentation, Nick likes to tease me about dress code, about what we wear. And what's very important to me when we're doing these presentations is, suiting up, to borrow a phrase from television. You got to suit up. You have to look great. You have to look professional. You have to really put on your best appearance because, again, that's the first impression you make on people. Nick was prepared to order these red, look like zoot suits or pimp suits or something.
That's actually what they were called. They were labeled zoot suits.
That we were going to use for our presentation. And as much as I would like to own, it's always been a dream of mine to own one of them. I don't
a red
think
one or
a red one would be fantastic. Are you kidding me? I don't think our first presentation as the Rockstar Principals at a national conference. Let's wait till we get a little more cachet, maybe. You know what I mean? We get a little more renown, a little more widespread cachet around the country, and then maybe we can break out the red zoot suits down the line.
Now, of course, everything I do is usually in some sort of jest, so I was only partly serious. But let's be serious about that for a minute and follow up on because it's going to seem right now that I'm being hypocritical because I always talk about the unimportance of ties in the workplace, and how it doesn't always have to be, sometimes we have to dress down basically, and we've talked about that multiple times before. However, I'm gonna use a different comparison to illustrate my point. And this will explain why it's important to showcase your best physical presentation at a conference, whether it's a national level conference or a state level conference. I'm going to use our podcast as an example for a moment. When John and I started the whole podcast thing, we talked about potentially doing it as a video podcast, not doing it audio, doing it video.
And boy, wouldn't that be a treat for you folks?
Absolutely. I mean, come on, let's be real. However, my biggest objection to doing that was the level of quality that we would produce.
Right.
I knew, and we talked about it, that in the audio world, that the technology is good enough where we can spend $100 on a USB microphone and use, the programming software that's out there and create something that sounds relatively professional. I mean, granted, we're not, on podcast one with really strong, editing and everything else.
Not yet.
We sound good. If we had gone video, we would have looked what's the word I'm looking for?
Half-ass.
Okay, there it is. We would have looked,
It wouldn't have had the professionalism and you were absolutely right about that. And that's, again, that's a good tip for when you're doing your presentations. As much as people, you may be thinking you want to use some kind of multimedia, and that's great. But I would just say, make sure you know what you're using. Make sure and if it's not you have someone that is close to you that's familiar with how to use that stuff and how to put it together for you, because the last thing you want is, some kind of visual presentation that looks like it was done in a school TV studio in 1992.
Right.
I mean, with
1992
with the bad green screen.
Exactly.
And I mean, it's got to look. I use a great thing that we experienced recently was that STEM Academy presentation. We were asked by the president of the Pennsylvania Association of Elementary and Secondary School Principals, Dr. Bill Ziegler, to do a video element that he wanted to post on the PAESSP website. And Nick was insistent that we do it at our school district STEM Academy, which, in addition to being the #1 school in Pennsylvania, they also have a fantastic TV studio. And the kid there that helped us, I forget his name, but he did a great job of putting together a real professional looking video that I was proud to say we were, associated with when it went live across the state.
And that notion of quality control becomes your calling card. And I have another example I want to use with that. When I was with Upper Marion, we presented at the State Special Education Conference in 2004, I believe it was. And this was on making AYP, what we did to make AYP with our special ed population. And my very close friend, Jen Dilks, and Jen is the principal at Lower Moreland Middle School in Pennsylvania. At the time, we were working together, and we were presenting with our assistant superintendent, who is now the superintendent in Lower Moreland, Mary Kay Healey. And we had to put together a poster, like a trifold, for part of the presentation. So Jen and I worked very hard creating this poster. I thought it looked great. Jen thought it looked great. Mary Kay came in to see it prior to leaving for the presentation and pretty much laughed at us and said, we can't use this. And we said, why? She's like, this isn't professional enough. Right. And she was 100% right, as we were to find out. She had it professionally done at a real place, like not a Kinko's. I forget what those graphic design places. And the in terms of quality, the way the poster looked versus what we created. Right. What we created was fine for any district level presentation. But at a state conference, Mary Kay was right. It needed to be a whole nother level. That's what, however many people sitting in that room, they're seeing what you're putting in front of you. And you have to, the presentation content, people only take so much from your content. What they take in, though, is the visual, the audio, and your graphic presentation that's there. So you really have to consider, are the materials you're bringing forth enough? Is it what it needs to be to convey professionalism? Yeah.
And the last thing I would say, just in terms of the overall presentation, get past the whole, you want to have activities and you want to vary it. And, that's similar to what you want to do in the classroom. But I think you definitely want to have takeaways. You definitely want to give people something that they can walk out of there with, whether it's a handout. And again, there's nothing wrong. I go back to, all roads lead to Todd Whitaker. I go back to what Todd Whitaker says about what's wrong with the phrase bad lecturer classroom. It's not the word lecturer, it's the word bad lecturer.
Yep.
If you get up there, if you're not going to use any kind of multimedia, you're not going to use anything like that, you better have a darn good, and I've seen it. I've seen people that just get up and give a lecture. He's one of them. Todd Whitaker is one of them. He gets up and speaks, and you're on the edge of your seat. So there's nothing wrong with just giving. There's nothing wrong with giving handouts as long as they're great. You should make sure they're really good and give people something that they can use. But I know people have burned things to DVDs, burned things to CDs, given people even key drives that they can walk out with that has everything preloaded on there for them. Stuff like that. If you have the ability to do things so that people have something tangible, something they can actually walk out of there with. And that's for two reasons. Number one, it helps them. It gives them it saves them the trouble of having to take copious notes throughout your presentation. If you have an outline of your notes already prepared for them, they can, engage and listen more. But it also gives them something to show their boss. which to me is a big thing in a lot of districts in this time of cutting corners and, pinching back on what districts are doing. If people can go back and share with their boss, hey, look, here's this key drive that I got. Here's this DVD that they burned for me, this CD that they burned for me. I think it really helps in terms of the overall reception of what you have to say.
Go back to your Todd Whitaker point for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And at the PAESSP conference where Todd was the keynote speaker, he had a one-slide PowerPoint that was on the screen before he started.
Yeah.
Now, but here's the point I'm going to make. Yeah, he kept us on the edge of our seat for an hour during his presentation. However, right before he presented, he didn't have any prep time because he did the interview with us.
Right.
So he went from the interview with us up onto the podium and then started the lecture.
Yeah.
Here's what that indicates. Not that he is the amazing off-the-cuff, presenter who doesn't need prep. My guess is that over the years, and the fact that he's presenting from the books he's writing, he is so prepared for what he's going to do, the key points and the takeaways he wants the audience to get, and his knowledge of his material.
That's the key.
To where nothing can throw him off in terms of questioning.
Right.
That's what makes, like you said, bad lecturer. You get someone up there talking about a topic people want to hear about with a knowledge base that is what it should be, because you're there to hear that professional, his expert opinion. Really, that's all you need.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that you can think of that you could just listen to them speak. You could listen to James Earl Jones read the phone book, and then that would be interesting, and some people would get something out of just listening to his voice. And some people think that because they can speak well, that's enough for a lecture. But you have to, the thing that separates Dr. Whitaker from a lot of presentations that I've seen is his knowledge base of what he's talking about and his passion for what he's talking about. You can tell that it's genuine. He truly believes in what he's doing. He truly has a commitment to spreading that word to people. If you're expecting that just because you have a lot of detailed information that people are going to, that your presentation is going to go well, you're wrong. People want to see that. Again, I go back to the Ben Stein thing in Ferris Bueller, where he's talking about voodoo, something, DOO, economics. He knows what he's talking about, but there's no passion behind that. There's no commitment behind that on the part of trying to relay that passion to people. So you definitely want to have both the knowledge base, but also the passion and commitment to what you're talking about, and that'll come across.
And part of that commitment, and this will be my last point on the topic, I'm going to use a pro wrestling example, because what would an episode of the Rockstar Principles podcast be without...
It would not be complete. I think this might be the furthest we've gone into one without a wrestling comparison.
That's possible. When I was wrestling, and in particular when we were doing a televised match, it would always infuriate me when I would see other wrestlers on the card who would half-ass put their matches together and go out on television and deliver what we would call the shits. That's what you called a terrible match.
Wow.
Beep. I'll bleep that part out. But I prided myself in having the ability to have the best matches on the card, but also to put the preparation into the proper TV presentation.
Right.
So first of all, you got to get there early and make sure you're ready. But I needed to know, where's the hard camera? So the angle that's going to be on the match most of the time, where's that camera? What direction in the ring is it pointing? So I know where the important moves have to be showcased. You go and talk to the commentators to make sure they know what's going to happen in your match. What are the key parts to the match that they need to be able to commentate on? Is there a backstory between the two wrestlers that maybe they don't know? What's your finishing move so they can talk about it? Yeah. Those are tiny little details that most people leave out. But if you don't leave them out, if you put the preparation in, your presentation, your match, is going to look so much better than everyone else's.
I just listening to you, I just had an idea for our presentation.
Oh boy!
I think we need a commentator during our presentation that can interject while we're talking. Periodically, they could just interject. All right, so this is the point where Nick's going to turn it over to John, and I know they did a lot of work on this, and this is somebody that can just totally interject. Maybe that's Farina's ticket to Nashville. Your assistant principal. I know Farina really wanted to go. We can do tryouts for our commentator for our presentation.
He also has to do the pre-show where he sits outside
where he interviews us. Yeah, where he sits outside. Right. He's outside, and he has a taped interview of us talking about, we're going to bring it today. This is the best presentation you people are ever going to see.
Oh, my God. He'll do it, too, because
people that will either be fantastic or it'll drive people away. People won't even walk through the door if they see that.
Wow. Okay, and my last point is make sure you set up your pyro far enough away from the audience so it doesn't burn anyone.
Right. Yeah, your pyrotechnics, your laser show, you want to warn people that may have predisposed to epilepsy, and you don't want anybody getting a seizure that can just bring a whole presentation down. Anybody that has allergies to confetti cannons,
fog machines,
right. You want to make sure you put all those disclaimers. Because you're not going to do a presentation without those things.
No, you. Yeah, right? I mean that's
you wouldn't hesitate, please. You got to have the pyrotechnics, the laser show, confetti cannon, fog machine. That's an absolute. I mean, I didn't say that because I just figured people knew that that was a given that you had to have all those things for your presentation.
And let's be real for a second. You don't need the extra bells and whistles like the flamethrower. You don't really need that.
I'll cancel that order then. I was getting that ready. I had a guy lined up that was going to set us up for that. But
no, I meant they didn't. We definitely did.
Oh, we don't want to give that away. Okay. Yeah. All right, good. All right, well, we hope you got some good ideas from our little discussion there about presenting. I strongly encourage anybody, again, going back to something I was told, you don't know how much you know. Think about how silly that phrase sounds, but it's true. You don't realize the things that you know that other people would pay to hear. So if you're in a position of leadership or even aspiring to be in a position of leadership, apply to do presentations. Start at a local level, work up to the state level. It's a great opportunity to not only get your name out there, and it's good resume building material, but it's a good way to spread the positive word too about the things that you're passionate and the things that you know about. So that's something that I feel is an absolute must for people in the principalship to be doing. So get out there, folks, and get her done.
And now a word from our fake sponsors. But we'd really love if they were our real sponsors. Seriously, we would love it.
Who are the people in your Twitter hood?
What?
In your Twitter hood. In your Twitter hood, yeah.
Who are the people in your Twitter hood?
The people that you meet each day. Mother boop. We've got an exciting commercial for you today. This week's edition of Who Are the People in Your Twitter Hood features people exclusively from the new and fantastic, groundbreaking Twitter chat taking place Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hashtag PAESSP chat.
We know you all know about that. I mean, the word is spreading across the country. The popularity of this chat is just growing exponentially on a daily basis.
Off the hook.
We mentioned before our partner in that chat, PAESSP President Dr. Bill Ziegler, which I believe his Twitter handle is @DrBillZiegler. Dr. Ziegler has done a great job at really promoting the whole concept of using Twitter as a communication tool for principals. So we wanted to mention in this week's segment/commercial about Twitterhood, I wanted to mention a couple of people that participated and a couple of people that I think are out there really helping you, particularly if you're in the Pennsylvania area, but also on a national level. So I'm going to start with somebody that I've known for a number of years. She was actually I first met this person. She was on the selection committee that came to visit my school in 2009 when I was selected to be a nationally distinguished principal. And her name is Dr. Melissa Patchke. And Dr. Patchke, you can find her on Twitter. Her Twitter handle @Melissa, MELISSA, Patchke, PATSCHKE, spelled just like it sounds. @Melissa Patchke is Missy's Twitter handle. She does a great job, not only at her school, she's an elementary principal in the Springford School District, but more importantly for those of you listening, not more importantly, what's most important is what she does at her school, but more importantly for those of you listening, Missy does a lot of stuff on the national level. She's involved in NAESP, the National Association of Elementary School Principals. She's a National Principal Mentor Certification Coach. She's really involved in the mentoring program. Federal Relations Coordinator. She works with the feds about trying to get some of the initiatives that principals support. But she's also the regional rep on the NAESP board. She represents New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania on that board. So Missy does a lot for you. And so I think it'd be really cool if we could get her some followers. So her Twitter handle.
Hold there. Don't give it yet.
Huh?
Let's give him even another reason.
Record scratch. Yeah.
Melissa Patchkey was instrumental and critical in the recent uppage of the amount of insurance, the legal insurance you have through your national organization for elementary school principals. Secondary principals prior to just this fall had more coverage available to them financially. She fought that. She said elementary principals needed just as much, and they equaled the playing field there, and she was critical in that.
Absolutely right. Missy does a great job, again, representing you and looking out for the needs of principals all over. So again, Twitter handle at Melissa Patchkey, her last name Patschke. Give her a follow on Twitter. And
the P is for passion. The P is for passion.
That's right.
I know, it's for Patchkey, but
okay. Be sure and tell her though that you're following her because of the Rockstar Principals podcast. Give us a little shout out. So that's my Twitterhood follower for this week. Nick, who do you have?
Well, I picked someone who's actually outside of Pennsylvania, but has been in both of our chats.
Huh? That's possible? Wait, you can be from outside Pennsylvania and participate in PAESSP chat?
Listen, Larry.
Inside joke.
This week I selected at Principal Nauman, who is an elementary education principal in Lewis, Delaware. She is an avid participator in Twitter chats. She has a huge professional learning network on Twitter and brings sincerely insightful comments to her Twitter chats. So she's not just there to lurk. She is contributing, she's taking ideas, she's making things happen. She has a lot of professional development that takes place as well. I mean, she's heavily involved. In fact, they have something coming up with another Twitter account. It's at MathMinds. I'm not sure of the details quite yet, but once we find out, we can communicate that on a further episode. But Jenny is fantastic. We enjoy interacting with her on a weekly basis. And you definitely should follow that Twitter account if you're into education and what happens there. So her account is at Principal Nauman, and let me spell that for you, Nauman. Here it is.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll hit us with the joint one.
Okay.
So, as you know, our third one is a joint decision by both John and I. Only criteria, it had to be someone who was in our chat last week, and here's someone who is an important person in the association, PAESSP. It's the executive director, who on his pizza likes ham and pineapple. It is Paul Healey. His Twitter account is at PMHEALEY4. And John, what can you tell us about Paul?
Well, I can tell you that the reason I was just distracted was because I was looking for his Twitter handle. I was trying to find him on Twitter so that I could go into more detail about exactly what Dr. Healey does. But I can tell you that he's a former principal, he's a former superintendent, former president of ASCD, the National Association that I'm sure everybody's familiar with. But Dr. Healey, in addition to all of those things, also happens to be good friends with our superintendent, Dr. Mussolini. So we always like to give special props to friends of our boss, make the boss happy. But as executive director for the PAESSP, Dr. Healey's really, that's a full-time job, being executive director. And I know a lot of times when you hear presidents and people on the board like I am, you're doing that in addition to your job as a principal. This is his full-time job now that he's retired from the superintendency, and it's really a vital job. Executive directors of organizations really do a lot to bring recognition to the organization. They get vendors, they get people to help sponsor things that are really for principals. So it's a vital job to the lifeblood of associations like ours. And Dr. Healey is the executive director-elect. I know he's taking over for Dr. Hartman. I think they're about to make that transition. Actually, our board meeting is this week. I'm going to be heading up later on this week to Harrisburg to our board meeting, and I think they're in the process of making that transition. But Dr. Healey, again, as Nick mentioned, participated in our chat the 2 times that we've done it, brings great insight, but also has a lot of great information. Just scrolling through his Twitter feed, has a lot of cool stuff and cool links and just things about, here's something about revising curriculum to add IB courses, something that I know, IB being International Baccalaureate, something that is near and dear to our hearts in Downingtown. So really cool stuff that Dr. Healey tweets out there, and he definitely regularly tweets things. So somebody that you should give a follow to, and I'm sure you'll be glad you did.
And if you're not glad you did, stop
we don't want
listening
to
to
hear
our
about
podcast
it.
and go do something else.
Well, keep listening. Just keep subscribing and downloading, but don't listen.
That's true.
Just don't stop the subscription, because we don't want our subscriptions to go down.
That's true. Hey, are you one of those people who hate iTunes? You're anti everything Apple? You know what? I'm not going to argue with you.
First of all, what's wrong with you if you are?
You know what? Let's not argue with those
Okay.
people. Let them have their opinions, because everyone's entitled to one. Instead, listen to our podcast on our webpage. You know what it is. You know it. rockstarprinciples.libsyn.com. Or listen to us on Stitcher. We're on Stitcher now. We know you hipsters like Stitcher. So just Google Rockstar Principles Stitcher. Get the link. Subscribe to us on Stitcher. Do it. Do it. And Hawaii, I'm getting sick of you.
I think Dr. Ziegler suggested in our most recent chat, I think a road trip is in order. I think we need to actually plan a trip to Hawaii, sponsored by our state association.
Yes.
And use that as an opportunity, because it's very important, I think, that the Pennsylvania Association of Elementary and Secondary School Principals develops a connection with our sister state of Hawaii.
Yes.
Everyone knows the deep tradition that lies between the 2 states of Pennsylvania and Hawaii. So I think it's really vital and important that we plan that trip in order to spread the word, and much like a Secretary of State goes on missions around the world to keep relations going with other countries.
Of course.
It's very, very similar. I think it's important that we need to do that.
In addition, I think our district, who also reaps the benefits of the Rockstar Principles, should co-sponsor the trip.
Okay, maybe they could share. One can pay for you, one can pay for me.
Let's do it that way.
Okay, that makes
and
sense.
it's going to be very important that we don't just visit like the main island of Maui. I think it's important that this trip hits every island.
Yeah, we want to leave no stone
unturned.
And there's a lot of stones in Hawaii. So we want to make sure that we, definitely make the most, because we don't want to have to go back.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to be frivolous and say that they should send us there once a year or anything like that. You know, if they send us this one time, and we'll do it right. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. We'll stay there for a good 2 weeks.
It's going to take about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think to make sure we cover everything. So yeah, there you go. We're putting it out there. Anybody that wants to maybe start a campaign to get us to go to Hawaii on a trip. For definitely for professional purposes.
And look, we know tax dollars are valuable. We understand that. So let's do this. Let's put it out right now. If you are from Hawaii and you are the owner or manager of a 5-star resort and you want to give us a room for free, let us know.
That's very nice.
Let us know.
It's a very nice idea.
Just put us up. Not 3-star, not 4-star. 5-star.
Is there anything? Do they make less than 5-star? I just automatically look at 5-star. I don't. If there's less than 5 stars, I assume it's not a resort. I figure it's
good point. Good point. Yeah. I like that.
All right. So there you have it. That's this week's Who Are the People in Your Twitter Hood? Welcome back to the Rockstar Principles Podcast. Thanks for sticking around for our next segment here. We're going to do something a little bit different. We usually try to take one recent article in the world of education and talk about that. But we just found out a little bit of news. The Rockstar Principals were recently accepted to present at the National Association of Elementary School Principals Conference this summer. So if you're heading out to the NAESP conference in Nashville, Tennessee this summer, be sure to look for us. But the topic for our presentation is on the longevity of the principalship, which was the topic of Nick's dissertation that he completed this past summer. So we're kind of taking that and expanding it and kind of going a little bit more into depth on particular areas. But one of the people that we follow on Twitter and that follows us back is a gentleman by the name of Dan Buettner. Is that how you say it, or Buettner?
I think it's Buettner, yeah.
Buettner. I'm looking from here. I can see the T-N-E-R. Okay, yeah, Buettner. And Dan does a whole study about longevity, but it's more about the longevity of people's lives and what it is that separates people that live to 100, what they do differently, what they do for health and well-being, emotional and physical well-being. So some real interesting stuff, and we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit because that's what part of our presentation is going to be about too. So I'm going to turn over to Nick and let him bring up a couple of the topics that Dan talks about.
So we figured, hey, how exciting is this? We're getting to present on something we're both
very exciting,
very passionate about, and I sent out during our tweets, of course, announcing that we're presenting. I copied Mr. Buettner in on our tweets, and he actually favorited us, and which was exciting because he has a lot of followers.
Yeah.
And so I shamelessly plugged us and asked if he would follow us if we did a good job at the conference. And he didn't even wait. He just kind of joined us and followed us right away. So rather than looking at a big chunk of his book, I mean, his 2 big books are called The Blue Zones and Thrive. And you'll learn a lot more about that through our presentation if you come to Nashville. Shameless plug. So we thought, hey, here's a fun way to do this segment. We'll go to his Twitter feed where he posts nuggets of wisdom from his research through National Geographic and his books. And then we can talk about that. So I'm going to scroll through. I'm going to pick a couple of the more interesting tweets about longevity, and I'm going to have John chime in with his normal inflammatory comments.
Inflammatory?
I don't know. I'm trying to make it sound controversial so people keep listening.
Okay. All right. So I'll disagree with everything you say.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Boom. Number 1, live simply. Globally, consumerism is the biggest suppressant of happiness. What do you think of that?
I could not agree with it more. I feel, and I'm probably the worst offender of this, but it's something that, I always feel guilty about when I do it. But yeah, consumerism, just constantly buying, trying to get, the old George Carlin thing about trying to have more stuff, if I'm reading this correctly, if I'm hearing what he's saying correctly. I think we get distracted from living our lives because we're looking to do so many different things, and I'm all into the discussions about how we overschedule our kids and don't give our kids downtime because we go from this practice to that practice to this rehearsal, and barrage our kids with by just ridiculous numbers of stuff, as George Carlin would say. I agree with that one a lot. I can see exactly what he's saying about how that's a threat to the longevity of your life because I think one of the reasons people live longer, I mean, I had a grandmother that lived into her 90s. I had a great-grandmother that lived into her 90s. One of the things that they had in common was just the simple way that they lived, both of them. Very, very simple people, not overburdened with all of these things that they had to juggle and balance in their lives. They just lived simply.
And it's when we look at the different cultures and things like that, there's an element that plays into all of this. And again, we're just hitting some tidbits today, but
right.
Pick up the Blue Zones, Amazon, Kindle. I mean, there's 100 different ways you can get it. Lots of articles online about it as well. But suppressant of happiness. I mean, it's too much. It's
right.
too much. Look at all the rich people. They're not happy.
I keep telling myself
that's me too. All right, next. Take an after lunch walk. 20 minutes outside in good weather boosts mood, broadens thinking, and improves working memory. We don't do it in schools.
No.
Teachers can't.
No, right? We can't.
I mean, it's just not something that
I mean, the only parallel I could make is maybe doing CAF duty, which to some people is a nightmare. But I love cafeteria duty. I love that interaction with the kids, in an informal setting like that.
And it's physical. You're walking around.
Yeah, right. You're walking around. Right. So I know it's not necessarily the same, but it is in a sense similar in that it's a mind shift. It's a different. You're taking your head out of the constant thought about school, and all the stuff about school, and just getting to personally interact with kids as you walk around your cafeteria. I guess that's the closest I could come to doing something like that.
Yeah, I mean a lot of our we'll draw a parallel with our teams. A lot of our teams on Fridays or during reach time, which is like an advisory period, will take their kids outside and walk around the building.
Yeah, right.
The sun exposure gives you the vitamin D, increases serotonin levels, boosts mood, the whole bit there. I tried a few times last year as the weather was getting nicer in the spring, that when we left lunch duty, we'd walk outside and walk around the building to the front just to get some fresh air and to get some sun. But then, you get busy. Something happens, you get called up, or you have a meeting and it's on the different end of the building.
Yeah, it's a good reminder, though. I mean, to definitely try to do stuff like that. That's a good idea.
Okay, another one. This is interesting. Okinawans restrict the number of calories they eat. Before every meal, they say, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong because I'm not Japanese, Hari Hachibu, which means eat until you are 80% full. And calorie restriction, not just through the blue zones, but through a multitude of the literature, definitely promotes longer living. So the blue zone of Okinawa, which is a high concentration of people who live very long lives, that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, I guess we're getting off education here in a sense, but I mean, in thinking about that just in terms of my own health, I think a lot about when we eat. Like I can't tell you how many times I've had dinner because it's dinner time.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't really feel hungry, but it's dinner time. So you eat, and just kind of going through the motions. So hopefully that's not happening in schools. Hopefully we don't have, kids going to school, but just because it's school time, or teachers coming into work just because it's work time. I mean, hopefully there's people still passionate about it and they're into what they're doing. But I can see the point that he's trying to make there. I think another one you touched on, I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder, but one of the other ones you said when we were talking about this beforehand was eating slower.
Yeah.
And how that gives you time to actually realize you're full. I've heard that before too, that oftentimes because when you eat fast, you don't realize you're full until, you're well past full. So
another piece to that, the slowing down is the brain relays, how full you are. But another tip with that is the mindfulness of eating. And that if you can actually, and this is easier to do when you're alone, eating alone. But as you're eating, clear your mind and focus on the act of eating. Focus on the taste of the food. Focus on what you're putting into your body. And that actually will help the brain process being full faster, and you'll eat less that way. And you give appreciation for the food you have.
So again, and trying to relate it to, school leadership, kind of doing things that take your mind out of that regular routine. I know, like, for instance, driving to school, so especially home in the afternoon, it's a good time to decompress. And, I try to make a mental note. There's like a halfway point when I'm driving home. And when I hit that halfway point, I make sure by the time I get to that halfway point that I've switched off, thinking about school stuff to thinking about other stuff, thinking about life, thinking about what's going on with my family, thinking about, hoping the Flyers make the playoffs. I don't know, something just completely different from the school thought. Yeah, they're doing all right. They're doing all right. They got off to a slow start, but they're doing okay right
quietly,
now. Working their way up. Yeah. So I think it's similar in that what you're saying is just being mindful of what you're doing, actually thinking about driving. How many times have you been driving and you get somewhere and you're like, I don't even remember how I got here because you weren't, thinking about what you were doing. It becomes so second nature. Maybe listen to a podcast while you're driving. Maybe that would take your mind off of things. If you could,
I'm trying to think of a good one.
If only there was a podcast. If only there was someone who was recording some kind of leadership.
Meaningful.
Actually, we're kind of preaching to the choir here. If people are listening
they're hearing this, they're listening to this. Guess we kind of lose on that one.
Yeah.
All right, our next one, and this is something that obviously I think people know, but I don't know if they actually choose to believe it and practice it, because I have a feeling the next two we're going to share, I think most leaders are afraid to be this way because they don't think it looks like leadership. So here we go. The word sardonic originates in Sardinia. Gathering daily to laugh with friends is key to shedding daily stresses. And the island of Sardinia, this is one of the things they do, And through Dan's research, they've found that it increases longevity in those blue zones. So what do you think of that one?
How many times have we talked about our elementary colleagues and how we feel for them because they're kind of on an island there in elementary school, that it's difficult for them to have someone that they can do that with because they don't have assistant principals. At least in our district, they don't have assistant principals to talk to. I know we gather not only within our building. I have 2 assistant principals. Nick has 2 assistant principals most of the time, 2 assistant principals. And we gather and we kid and joke and laugh. And I even get our counselors involved. We try to eat lunch together, when our schedules work.
Yep.
Even when we have administrative team meetings, trying to, keep it light, to laugh, keeping it, it makes it more personable, I think. I think it gives people more of a reason to be there, and I definitely think it helps cope with the stress. So
absolutely,
my heart goes out all the time to our elementary colleagues because I hear from them that that's a struggle for them because they're kind of alone on that island.
So I guess one of the things we're going to have to do at some point, since we keep talking about this and we're going to be presenting with it soon, is figure out a solution. Like how do we help our elementary colleagues? There's got to be a way. Is it Skype me? I don't know. We'll think of something. All right, but tied directly into that with the laughter is have an attitude and live longer. An attitude. Sardinians are known for their dry and sarcastic humor, which keeps them laughing and living to 100. And one of the reasons I said this is going to be somewhat antithetical to what principles and what we normally think about leadership is because we always say don't be sarcastic with the kids.
Right.
That's terrible. This, that, the other thing. And this isn't necessarily saying being sarcastic with the kids, but with each other perhaps. And that ties into the humor and the laughing and everything else.
I'm not going to comment one way or the other. I think sarcasm, I'm the worst at practicing when I preach when it comes to that because that's something, a mantra I use all the time with kids. But I can absolutely see what they're talking about there in how that, again, is a helpful coping mechanism.
Definitely. And I've always found teaching emotional support all the years that I did, sarcasm was one of the best ways to connect with kids. Most kids, I'm talking. I know, I'm not talking about, with the spectrum, being on the autistic spectrum and things. Most kids get sarcasm because they do hear it at home from their parents quite a bit. And I think to a degree, and now I'm generalizing here, but I think it does make people more relatable when they can see that we're adults too, and we can be slightly left of center in terms of the way we present. You know what I mean? That we're not always the stuffed shirt or...
Yeah, I would only say that, and we're kind of going against what Todd Whitaker would say, because I know this is one of his mantras about never being sarcastic with kids. But I think in a sense what he's saying is, that personal biting sarcasm about children, their lives, their work habits, their appearance, things like that kind of sarcasm. But sarcasm, if you're having a conversation about a TV show, or if you're having a conversation,
hopefully that's how this is coming
anything
off.
in pop culture, it is. I definitely see what you're saying because
it's
I think
laughing.
You're right.
It's laughing with you, not at you.
Yeah, well, I if I'm going to be sarcastic with kids at all, I usually use it in poking fun at myself. I try to use my sarcasm, which I think I have a pretty good grasp on, and my 15-year-old daughter reminds me all the time that she gets it from me. But I always try to use that sarcasm pointed at myself to let the kids see that, that I'm fallible. I mean, I have my, and I recognize that I have that there's, things about that we all have that can be funny and humorous. So, yeah, I think there's appropriate times.
Sure.
I think the mistake that can be made with it is that people use it as a way to get back at kids. People use it as a way to get revenge. Oh, you didn't do your homework, so I'm going to take a shot at you.
Right.
You disrupted my class, so I'm going to take a shot at you. That personal, like I said, sarcasm, there's just no place for it at all.
So let's end with this next one, because I think it's relative, since we have a special guest in our recording studio today, Thor, who has left us, my dog, my mutt.
He walked out. He got bored with us. That's not a good sign if a dog gets bored with our podcast.
I think you stopped petting him.
Maybe that's what it was.
But anyway, so here's this one. And how can you argue with it? You ready? Adopt a dog. Dog owners get more exercise with their pet companions and actually live longer.
I can't think of a time period in my life where I did not have a dog for more than, a few months. I mean, I've always had a dog. I've always seen the value in owning a dog. Cats, not so much. I wasn't a cat person. I got married, and we got a couple cats, and I like those cats, and they're fine.
Don't lie.
Yeah, the cats. I don't get cats, but I don't have as much of a hatred for cats as what I used to. I can coexist with a cat now, but dogs, to me, I see that. I see the physical benefits of it, but I also see the emotional benefits of it, especially when you rescue a dog, especially when you take a dog like you did with Thor that was in a place where he needed a home. So I see absolutely what he's saying there, the benefits of it.
Definitely. The as we close, and this is, I think, we're obviously going to be revisiting this a lot more now as we move forward, get ready for the presentation and everything. Another interesting article fact that came out, and we're not going to talk about this today, but I just want to mention it before we close the segment. Kind of let's plant the seed here. A study came out with validity, so it was peer referenced, and there's some research behind it, that married men and women with children are less happy than married men and women without children. And what's interesting in the article, because it got qualitative to a degree, and they did a lot of interviewing with these people that were part of the study, they found that happiness wasn't necessarily the goal after children were had and people understood what having children meant. So as important as we always tout happiness to be, and its importance towards longevity, the whole notion of having a family and having kids isn't necessarily tied to happiness. There's other values, there's other affirming overall life goals that might be more important than happiness, actually.
You just blew my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Just completely blew my mind. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, as a father of 3, I obviously can't imagine being as happy as I am without the 3 of them in my life, but I see what you're talking about. I see what you're talking about. Wow. Yeah, I'm not going to comment because I don't want to either upset our listeners that don't have kids and offend people that don't have kids, but also, make it seem, I mean, sure, it has its ups and downs. Having a family, having kids has its ups and downs, but I can't imagine life without them. So
yeah, but we'll do a separate segment with the actual research.
I'd like to see that research, and read a little bit more about it.
But very interesting. Get people's interest stoked here quite a bit.
Pique your interest.
All right,
whet your appetite.
The appetite. All right, pick up the Blue Zones or Thrive. Start with the Blue Zones. Amazon, one of the best ways to get it. Get it on your Kindle. Hit Dan up on Twitter at Blue Zones. Very simple, at Blue Zones. Some great stuff on there, and we'll be right back. Or we won't. Who knows?
I hope we will.
Yeah,
I hope you'll stay tuned at least to find out if we're right back.
Day to day, you never know what's going to happen. You never know.
Wow, that's depressing.
Life's a mystery. Life is up.
And now a word from our fake sponsors. But we'd really love if they were our real sponsors. Seriously, we would love it.
Is your mom there?
No, I'm home alone.
Well, you won a prize. What's your address?
42 Oak Street. Hey, Roblox, some stranger's bringing me a prize.
A stranger, huh? All he wanted to bring you was trouble. Remember, never tell anyone you're home alone, and never give anyone your address.
I'll say Mom can't come to the phone.
Smart thinking.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
The rock stars have returned with awesome episode 30. We're 30 episodes deep, and we have a special guest for this segment. Thor the dog is here with us. Thor, anything to say before we start?
He's sniffing me right now. That's about it. He probably smells my dog.
So what he wants me to do is turn it over to John for this segment of Maxwell's University of Leadership.
All right. So as you folks know, if you're a regular listener, we're working our way through Maxwell's 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And we are up to number 4. Number 4 being the law of navigation. And the law of navigation says anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. This is a great one, one that, like all the 21 rules, but one that really resonates with me. And I think with most folks, if you're in a position of leadership, you need to know where you're heading. So as Maxwell says, before good leaders take their people on a journey, they go through a process in order to give the trip the best chance of being a success. Much like what I go through before, taking a family drive somewhere. I like to plan out the route, make sure we hit the sites, make sure there's things along the way that, are of interest to the kids. We make sure we stop and see those things. So a good leader plans those things out. So here's the process that Maxwell talks about. Good leaders navigators draw on past experience. I started to read that as navigate and draw, and I knew right away that one was wrong.
Might not work.
Navigators draw on past experience. In other words, you've been through things before, and you use that to make adjustments as you're moving through the process. Step 2, navigators examine the conditions before making commitments. Again, similar to, if I'm planning a trip with my family, I'm going to look at the weather forecast, check and see if there's going to be rain, any inclement weather, and then we plan for that before we head out. You're going to do the same thing when you get ready to make a plan for your school. You're going to check out the conditions before you begin to move through the process. And then step 3, navigators listen to what others have to say. This is probably the most difficult one, because I know when you have an initiative, you have something that you're really excited about, it's difficult to take the time to really stop and listen, because sometimes people have things that, constructive criticism that might make it, might take the wind out of your sails a little bit. So that might be, at least for me, it's probably one of the more difficult ones, but one that I definitely do every time.
Wait a minute, time out. So using your analogy of your family trips, you're telling me that you listen to what Julie has to say in the passenger seat when you're planning a trip, when she's telling you, when she's backseat driving?
Nick, I've been married over 20 years. Do you think it's a coincidence?
I know which way I'm going. This is the right way.
A good leader and a good husband always takes the time to listen to the boss. All right. And then the next one, the last one, Maxwell says, navigators make sure their conclusions represent both faith and fact. I'm going to go a little deeper into this one because I think it's might be the one that tweaks people a little bit and get you interested in what the point he's trying to make here is that the leader has to have a positive attitude, but on the other hand, you also have to be able to see the facts realistically. So, again, you have something you're really passionate about, you're excited about, something you think is really going to work, and it's great to have that passion. It's great to, it helps to get your staff committed to it if you show you have that passion. But you have to have your eyes open through the process. You don't want to get blindsided. Balancing optimism and realism, faith and fact, can be very difficult, according to Maxwell. So that's the 4-step process. Step number 4, the law of navigation. Any thoughts, Dr. Nick?
Yeah, let's go to that bullet with the faith and fact. I think that's the most interesting and the most deep out of the ones here. Not as obvious as some of the other ones maybe. And part of what he's saying is that whole notion of optimism, the faith part, is being able to see the end of the journey in your mind. And this is hard on 2 fronts. First, we'll start with the definition of faith, which is belief without empirical knowledge. It means you don't have proof, 100% proof, that it's going to work out, which is pretty much the truth with anything. We don't know what's going to happen day to day in life, no matter how much we think we do, no matter how much we prepare. There's always going to be unexpected occurrences that happen. However, you as the leader, if you don't believe strongly enough, if it's not something you're passionate enough about, then it's not going to be successful. If you can't see that roadmap the whole way through in your mind, it's not going to work. And I think the trick with that is, and this is the second part, is if it's an initiative that comes from up top, let's say, and it's not something that you feel strongly about or something that you feel is important, sometimes that's what we have to do as principals, as the middle managers. We have to lay that out. But it becomes critical as to how we lay it out. Are we honest with our staff? Do we tell them we're not invested? Or do we fight it at that top level when it's handed down to us? If we really don't believe in it, do we take a stand? Do we choose the hill to die on? And I know it's kind of getting before his point. You know what I mean? Like that faith in fact. We're almost going a step, prior to that. But I think it's important because a lot of times our output, the way we present, is going to determine whether or not this is going to be real. Is it going to fall flat? How is it going to work? So I'd say that really is a critical point, especially in our world. You know what I mean? Like in terms of the laws of leadership, you could be an entrepreneur and it's your company and there is no prior step. But we as principals, we've got to consider that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to birdwalk it a little bit. I think maybe I want to jump on something that you said there about, because I've gotten, and I know you have gotten, we've gotten directives, we've gotten things in our position that we didn't necessarily believe in, and maybe in each position, every time hopefully you don't always fight it. Hopefully sometimes you just, if it's not that big of a deal, you're able to make it work. But and if you're going to fight it and make your point, with your bosses, your superintendent, your assistant superintendents, what have you, that's great to do when you're up at central office. But I would say you're setting yourself up for failure if you stand in front of your staff and say, oh, here's another one of those things they're making us do. This is just something else that being pushed down on us, and isn't this horrible and isn't this awful? You absolutely have to put on a good front, put on a brave face, positive spin, whatever words you want to use. You have to sell it to your staff. You have to at least make the effort to sell it to your staff because, for two reasons. Number one, if you're bad-mouthing the boss, you're not going to be there very long.
Yep.
I mean, word will get back to them if you're not supporting something, if you openly say you don't support something. And the second thing is it's going to fail. It's going to flop. If the staff doesn't see buy-in from you, it's got no shot of working in your building. And while that may be what you want, who wants anything to fail in their school? Who wants anything to flop in their school? I always go back to, I'm a big fan of war movies, and I always go back to one of my favorites, Saving Private Ryan, where Tom Hanks is talking to the soldiers in his squad. And they're saying how they never hear him complain. They're complaining about this mission that they have to go on to save Private Ryan. And they're talking to Captain Miller, Tom Hanks' character, about, why don't we ever hear you complain? And he turns to them and says, well, there's a chain of command for complaints, and that chain of command goes up. He says, you complain to me, I complain to my bosses, and it moves up. You don't complain down the chain of command. You never go to your teachers. You never go to your parents. You never go to your kids and complain and let them see you complaining about something, because it's uninspiring. It takes away any thought that you might be somebody who can handle adversity, or you're someone who can, deal with problems when they arise. You just look like a complainer. So you have to make sure that, you put on that public face, that public persona where people see, I'm not saying you do, backflips and cheerleading and everything like that for things, but you just say, look, here's the deal. This is what we're doing, and we're moving forward with it. And let's see, what do we need to do to make it work in our school?
Sometimes I'll do a backflip if it.
Really?
Yeah, if it'll.
You know what? I blew out my knee a couple years ago. I just can't anymore. I used to open every faculty meeting with a good backflip, but it doesn't. I'm 44 now. I'm just making excuses. I should probably work on that. That would really go over well. You think? Should I try to make that happen?
It's like anything else. If you go to the well one too many times,
that's true. That's true. It stops being impressive. Opening a faculty meeting with a backflip, it stops being impressive.
You got to choose your spots there.
Right. Just like I'm choosing where I'm scratching Thor right now.
Yes,
and he's enjoying it.
Thor's trained me. When I stop petting him, he puts the paw on
me.
me.
He just did that a second ago.
Yeah, so he's basically, I can't train him, but he can train me.
Yeah.
Great leader I am. Go back 1 second to, and this is a good point for our aspiring principals out there, or maybe our first-year principals who are listening. And you mentioned that if you're bad-mouthing the boss, he's going to find out. And some of you, the newer people that are thinking, oh, I can trust people. It's not going to get back. Let me caution you there. I can almost guarantee you with probably 98% certainty that even if you're only telling one person whom you trust very well, it's going to get back
Absolutely.
to your boss.
I can't tell you how many times I've gone to our boss and told him the bad stuff you say about him. I mean, I go to him all the time and tell him the way that you trash him and, just rip him apart. That's just something I regularly do.
As I would expect you to do.
Right. And you do the same to me.
Course,
it's just, wait,
well,
are we the only ones that do that?
Our meetings must run back to back. Our meetings with Dr. Mussolini. I think you're 9:30.
All right, that was a joke. I know he listens to our podcast on the outside chance he's listening to this segment. That's it. That was a joke. Sorry.
Yes, we are kidding.
Yeah.
Hey, Thor, anything you'd like to add to this segment?
Yeah, he wants me to scratch a little bit higher under his chin here, I think is what he's saying.
Hey, John, can you go a little higher?
Okay, you're doing the voice now. We're wrapping up.
Leaders listen to others.
All right, so that was number 4. As we're, again, working our way through Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So we're going to adjourn this session of the Maxwell University of Leadership, and we'll be right back with more of the Rockstar Principles podcast.
30.
Thanks for helping RSP top the charts in the Edu podcast world. Keep it real with Twisted Steel and School Appeal.